What I'm about to share might seem far-fetched, strange, almost conspiratorial. But as I lay this out, I ask you to listen with an open mind. The longer you reflect on this, the more clearly you'll see the patterns. There's a narrative some people cling to. It goes something like this. We're no longer being subjugated and oppressed by white society. But this idea, it's dangerous in its naivety. It could not be further from the truth. Yes, the lynch mobs, segregated water fountains, and the white-only signs are mostly relics of the past. But oppression, like all things, adapts. It evolves to survive. Today, it's cloaked in subtlety, less visible to the untrained eye, but no less insidious, no less deliberate. When white society could no longer uphold explicit racial domination without public outcries, they needed something more resilient, more pervasive. They turned to a sophisticated tool called social science. Social science is a neutral study of human behavior, how cultures evolved, how communities organize. But in the wrong hands and the wrong intentions, it becomes something far more dangerous, a weapon of control. What if I told you that these scientists have been used to maintain white supremacy, not by brute force, but by infiltrating the very way Black people perceive themselves? Sounds radical, doesn't it? But stay with me. There's a deeper, darker logic here. Now, I want you to take a step back. Have you ever questioned why mainstream media constantly bombards us with images and narratives of Black failure, criminality, dysfunction? This is not a coincidence. It's a carefully curated strategy, one born of fear. Fear of Black resistance, fear of Black unity, and fear of Black awakening. In 1969, after the wave of Black uprisings during the Civil Rights Movement, the Kernel Commission, led by white social scientists, was tasked with investigating why Black communities rebelled. They concluded something profound, that when Black people began to reclaim their collective identity, their history and dignity, we naturally resisted oppression. We would rise. So white institutions devised a plan to ensure that never happened again. They learned that by controlling our image, by distorting the mirror through which we view ourselves, they could lower our collective self-esteem, fracture our unity, and turn our frustrations inwards and against one another. Think about it. Why are Black children denied a racially affirming education? Why are we taught more about European monarchs than our own ancestral kings and queens? Why are the contributions of Black scholars, leaders, and revolutionaries minimized while European achievements are glorified as a pinnacle of civilization? This isn't a mere oversight, it's intentional. It's psychological warfare. By denying us knowledge of our own history, the system conditions us to see ourselves as inherently subordinate. It creates a sense of inferiority so subtle, so deeply embedded that we hardly notice its presence. But it's there, shaping how we see ourselves, how we move through this world, and how we interact with one another. This is not just about individual ignorance, it's a collective mental subjugation. Let's turn to our culture. Why is it that so many of us now wear derogatory... Now let's turn to our culture. Why is it that so many of us now wear derogatory labels as badges of honor? Why do we embrace terms like thug or even the N-word as if we're reclaiming them somehow strips them of their historical violence? This is not an organic evolution. It was engineered. Starting in the 1960s, the rise of exploitation films deliberately capitalized on the worst stereotypes of Black us and Black life. These films, produced by white-controlled media, push images of hyper-violent, hyper-sexualized, and criminal Black men and women into the mainstream. We unknowingly became and began to internalize these images. We observed their distortions until we began performing them ourselves. This is the negative media social engineering. It's a calculated effort to shape how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. When you control the narrative, you control the people who live within that paradigm. This is not scapegoating. This is not hyperbole. This is a cold, hard truth. Social science has been weaponized, not for the enlightenment of humankind, but for the subjugation of the Black bodies and minds. Whoever controls your media controls your mind. And if they can control how you think, they control your culture, they control your aspiration, they control the very sense of your self and identity. When a society repeatedly tells one group that they are inferior, lazy, criminal, or violent, the human mind, brilliant and adapted as it is, begins to believe it. And that belief begins to shape reality. That's the power of internalized oppression. But here's the thing. Once we expose these lies, once we unmask this manipulation for what it is, we reclaim our power. Knowledge is a form of resistance. It's an antidote to these poison narratives. The more we understand how we've been controlled, the more we can break free of these invisible chains. Oppression has adapted, yes, but adaptation doesn't mean invincibility. Covert doesn't mean unstoppable. The first step to dismantling the system is recognizing that it exists in the first place. Once we see the matrix, we can begin to tear it down. By reclaiming our stories, by immersing ourselves in our true history, by celebrating our culture in fullness, beyond the labels society has thrust upon us, we begin to become dangerous. We become free, and we rise as we have risen, as we always have risen. This is not a call to hatred. This is a call to truth. And the truth is that the system of oppression never disappeared. It did not vanish. It just evolved. It became more sophisticated, more psychological, more insidious. The question is, will we adapt? Will we rise to meet this challenge, or will we continue to be shaped by the forces working against us? The time is now. The time is now. It's time to wake up. So stay informed, stay united, stay powerful. Power to the people.